Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chapter 5, Lesson 1 of the Revolutionary War. This is the stuff that's leading up to the war, and it involves England and the colonies, and why England is so controlling, and why the colonies are so dissatisfied. Oh, I'm upside down now. That's right. So, England is controlling, the colonies are dissatisfied, and the image that I'm using here is a parent and a child, and maybe you can relate to this idea, the feeling of being dissatisfied as a child with your parents having control over you. Now, I will say this, you should have your parents controlling you because, I mean, look at you. Look what you're wearing right now. I mean, like, just think about your choices. Your parents should be in control of you until you prove that you can be independent. So what's happening here is the colonies are becoming independent. They're thinking that it's time to move out of the house, except England doesn't want them to ever leave the house. So this is the kind of controlling parent where if they never wanted you to ever leave the house, and I know that's not your parents. Your parents are, perhaps even looking forward to the day when you are spreading your wings and flying. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So why is England so controlling, and why are the colonists so unhappy? Well, remember back in the reasons for exploration, the competition for empire, England wants to be a world power. And there was also this war that the colonists had kind of started. This would be like if you started a problem with your neighbor by trespassing your neighbor's house, or hitting a baseball into your neighbor's window and breaking it, and starting a little neighborhood squabble. The colonists started this conflict called the French and Indian War. And you can imagine if you knocked a baseball into your neighbor's house, and your neighbor started a conflict with your parents, sued your parents might be a little bit more controlling about where you go and what you do because, hey, you started a war. Good job. Now, to prevent future wars, England has to pay for soldiers in the colonies. A little rifle there. So that's why England is being so controlling. Well, I should have gone back to this before. The neighbor is France and England. This is a war that's not the French versus the Indians. It's the French versus England, and the Indians are with the French. So why are the colonists so unhappy with this? The king and parliament pass a law called the Proclamation of 1763. This is a law that stops westward expansion. The colonists had been moving into French territory, and that's what caused the French-Indian War. So in 1763, the Proclamation of 1763, the king proclaimed that they had to stop moving so far west. They drew a line, a boundary. These people are obviously very sad about that. I'm sad. So you can't move west, and the colonists are upset about that because there's so much land out there, and remember the cultural differences. They think that the Indians are just wasting the land. So that's why they're not happy, because the land is out there, it's being wasted, as they would probably believe. So that's one reason why they're a little ticked off. Now the other A here stands for anger. So just remember that, it's just anger. For the Proclamation of 1763, I'm going to put for the Proclamation of 1763, I'm going to put a little stop sign here. And this guy is very upset about that. Why can't he go west? He wants to go west. Nope, it stopped. 1, 7, 6, 3. Next reason why they're mad. Remember these guys, the colonial governors? They resented the power of colonial governors. These are the same notes. You can write these up for the R and the E. They resented the power of the colonial governors. That's this guy. The governor does what the king tells him to. And these guys, whenever the legislature passes laws that the colonists have to follow, it's cool with the colonists because they're the ones who are in the legislature. So it's like how you guys might like what a student council would vote for at your school because the student council comes from the students. But the colonial governor would come along and take out laws the legislature had passed because the king wants him to. So they resented the power of colonial governors. That's this guy. They resented his power. And the fact that England wants to control that legislature. Their legislature, the one that comes from those people. If the principal was messing with your student council, and you guys don't have a student council, so never mind. That might make you mad if you did have one that was being controlled. Okay, the next one. This place over in England called Parliament. Parliament, if you know any French, I think the phrase parlez-vous français, speak you French, that's what this would mean. If you've seen Pirates of the Caribbean, parley means to speak. Hey, let's talk.
Parley. Parsnip, par, sleep, partner. Parlay? That's the one. Parlay. 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 To the depths, whatever mutton they thought of parlay. That would be the French.
Parliament is a place in England where they have their laws. It's their version of Congress. And just like Washington, D.C. has no representation in Congress, the colonies have no representation in Parliament in England. And that makes them mad too, because Parliament is the one passing the laws that they also have to live by. Remember the last page of notes for the last chapter talks about how the colonists still have to follow the laws of England. So, no representation in Parliament. And the last one, they're being taxed. Taxes are being opposed by the colonists. They don't want the taxes. They want to get rid of them. These taxes are paying for the French and Indian War. They're paying for the soldiers. They're paying for the world power. These taxes are paying for the French and Indian War. And the taxes are paying for the soldiers who have to live in the colonies. But because the colonists have no representation in Parliament, they don't like these taxes.
The years that followed were troubled ones. There were rumors of violence and rebellion, loud talk against the stamp taxes and other outrages.
How about it, men? Are we going to stand for this? No!
No taxation without representation.
And that leads to eventually events like this. The Boston Massacre comes from that dissatisfaction. All right. That's all for lesson 1. See you in lesson 2. Bye-bye.
Boston and the 13 colonies are an economic powerhouse, critical to Britain. Nearly 40% of everything exported from Britain makes its way to America. The fishing fleet ships thousands of tons of salted cod to the Caribbean. Returns with sugar and molasses, raw material for rum. Taxed by the British after every exchange. In Africa, rum is the currency used to purchase the most profitable cargo of all. African slaves. Between 1700 and 1800, more than 250,000 Africans are brought to the American colonies. More slaves than all those who came of their own free will. Most wind up on large plantations in the South, but they're also critical to the economy of the North. 10% of Boston's population is black. Boston is a melting pot, and tension is building. March 5th, 1770. After 3 days of unrest, an angry mob roams the streets. Hundreds of men who lost their jobs and blame the British gather on King Street and face off against 8 redcoats with orders not to fire. What's about to happen will change America forever. A 17-year-old wigmaker's apprentice, Edward Garrick, lights the fuse. This is how wars start. Private Hugh Montgomery is hit with a club. An African-American, Crispus Attucks, dies instantly. When the smoke clears, 4 more are dead. How Boston reacts will change the course of history. Silversmith and political radical Paul Revere captures the moment British soldiers kill 5 colonists in the streets of Boston. His engraving will fuel the fires of revolution as outrage spreads across the 13 colonies.
Unhappy Boston, see thy sons deplore, thy hallowed walks besmeared with guiltless gore, whilst faithless Preston and his savage bands, with murderous rancor, stretch their bloody hands.
The most formidable army in the world, firing on an unarmed crowd. An explosive image with a title that says it all. The Bloody Massacre. News spreads fast. The colonists are avid readers, a legacy from the first Bible-reading Puritans in Plymouth. Boston has the first weekly newspaper. There are now more than 40 papers across the colonies, and the new Postmaster General, Benjamin Franklin, has introduced a revolutionary postal delivery system. Night riders cut the delivery time in half. The communications network connecting the colonies is one of the best in the world. And the British have no idea. They hope the news can be contained. Before news reaches England, most of America knows about the Boston Massacre. A printer in Connecticut can read the exact same story as a farmer in North Carolina. December 1773. The Boston Gazette breaks another story that will fan the flames of rebellion.